Good afternoon, and thank you to each and every one of you for coming to what I believe is this very important briefing. Our focus today on LGBT asylum highlights the increased criminalization of asylum seekers within our immigration system. As Americans, we're reminded of the historic journey that many have taken to come to the United States. And we know that this country has served as the beacon of hope for many people that have been fleeing persecution abroad. Unfortunately, today, our arms are not open wide for the modern-day asylum seeker. Instead, we find the creeping criminalization of asylum seekers through the bed quota and the detention system, and not the safe harbor that we would expect. We're detaining asylum seekers, we're subjecting them to criminal prosecution and imprisonment, and we force many of them to begin their fresh start in the United States with a criminal conviction. The detention of asylum seekers results from this congressional bed quota and is increasingly the door through which many asylum seekers must enter before having access even to our asylum process. In many ways, we are the ones that are contributing to the criminalization of LGBT asylum seekers by offering a jail bed as the first place for them to lay their head. These asylum seekers arrive at our doorstep traumatized by the fear of persecution, which has been perpetrated by their own families, friends, and members of their community. And as we've heard today, many of them arrive completely alone. They are fleeing shame, societal rejection, and socially sanctioned physical assault, in some cases forced marriage, rape, fear of arrest and prosecution, and even death. As an attorney, I have watched asylum seekers enter courtrooms shackled to convicted criminals while being escorted from place to place by law enforcement. And these shackles are on their ankles as well as their arms. They are housed in isolated facilities with convicted criminals where we as attorneys that wish to represent them have much difficulty obtaining access. And law enforcement authorities rarely and seldom return the calls that the attorneys are putting forward. These practices create structural barriers to legal access and deny immediate protection of these asylum seekers. I've observed at least one judge in a courtroom who did not even bother to raise his head and look at the detainees that had come into the courtroom in front of them. He did not acknowledge them by looking at them as a group, nor did he acknowledge them by looking at them individually when their names were called for their case. Instead, he chose to focus on reading from documents throughout the entire hearing, thereby denying their dignity and never acknowledging their humanity. What we are really witnessing is a situation where the asylum seeker finds that the experience in the United States may not be really too different from the criminalization that they are fleeing. We must do better. We must provide the social supports that facilitate a pathway to freedom. It is important that we open not only our doors, but our hearts and our minds, and create a safety net for asylum seekers that enable them to thrive independently in the United States. In order to accomplish this, I suggest that we urge removal of the one-year rule so that the asylum seekers, as they discussed here today, have the time to adjust to freedom, they have the time and the courage to self-identify, and then they can make their way to those people, either nonprofits or private attorneys, that will be able to shepherd them through the asylum process and properly advance these claims, which has been referenced, can be often very, very complex. We must provide for the immediate availability of employment authorization so that they can support themselves while they're seeking this relief. We must also remove the bed quota and halt the criminalization of asylum seekers by actually just removing them from this detention process altogether. By doing so, we will restore the dignity and the respect for the humanity of the LGBT asylum seekers as they follow their quest for a life of freedom here in the United States.
Thank you, Rochelle.